Welcome back to Just Giants with Grump and the Cranky Fan, your favorite Giants podcast. I am your host, the Football Grump. With me, as always, is Mike, the Cranky Fan, and we're starting this week off early with a Monday episode. How you doing, Cranky Fan?
This Grump is my favorite day of the year, and can you guess why?
You like losing an hour of sleep.
No, the exact opposite. This is the day where we no longer come home from work in the dark. I love it. I don't mind losing an hour of sleep because I will catch that up in a day or two. I hate the fact of leaving the house in the dark and coming home in the dark. At least now that have to do my 12-hour commute daily back and forth to New Jersey, I would like to have some bit of daylight in it during that commute. So I'm very happy.
I feel the same way. I can't stand daylight savings. There's a proposal before Congress, not that long ago, like maybe like 2022, where they were gonna vote to remove it federally, and it like just never made it to the floor. But I was following that shit pretty closely because I can't stand it for all the same reasons that you say.
Well, wait a minute. Don't like the changing of it back and forth, or you rather just stick with because I like this cycle.
Yes.
I like the EDT, not the EST. I like it that everything starts later and ends later. That
Yeah.
to me is huge. And even in the winter, we're not an agrarian society anymore. Sorry to all you farmers out there who listen. You're doing good work, but you know, we're now in the 21st century, and we don't worry. We don't. Our lives don't revolve around when the sun is up, and yeah, it sucks. It sucks when it's dark at 4:40. It sucks. It just, I hate it. So today is my favorite day. Like I said, I'll get over the lack of sleep for a day or two. And people who whine about, no sleep 5 days later are the same people who piss me off, who say, Happy New Year in March. I mean, it's something that happens and you get over it in 24 hours. But this is great. So I'm in a much better mood from now, until early November.
So am I. I'm all for it. Some Giants news. It, I think the rest of this episode is going to be all downhill from that feeling right there for Cranky Fan. Not that anything bad happened, but just that there's nothing really good to talk about from
Yeah,
here on.
lightning got blown out yesterday. Lots of bad stuff happening. So yeah,
Oh yeah.
wonderful.
But the Giants did sign a quarterback. Since the last episode, they signed Tommy DeVito to his exclusive rights free agent contract. He is 26 years old. What does this mean to you, Cranky Fan? Does it mean anything? Does it mean nothing? Does it mean just a little bit of something?
It means one thing to me. It means, right now we have no other quarterbacks in this quarterback room. And to me, whoever the quarterback is going to be that we bring in to start week one is starting basically from scratch with this team, this offense, terminology, relationships. And Tommy DeVito is the only person returning who's part of this regime and knows his personnel. So anything he can do to make it easier for a free agent we sign, a rookie we draft, to make that transition smoother and easier, to me helps. And that is about the extent of it. But I think that's kind of important. It's not like we brought in a whole new coach. We're trying to keep continuity with our coaching staff. We have a core of receivers and running backs. We've talked about offensive line, but the most important position on this team, and probably the most important position in sports, is quarterback. And someone who at least knows the language that needs to be spoken. If we bring in a guy like, with someone with all the career accolades and experience of an Aaron Rodgers, there's going to be at one point, it's going to be like Spider Sledge 3-on-2 hyperbolic snot face. And DeVito says, well, it's not snot face, it's snot rag. And he's like, okay, got it. That helps. So in that respect, having somebody who's been around is good. What he does on the field or off the field, personally, I don't really care. I mean, this is a guy who's, at best going to be a third string quarterback. And if third string quarterbacks are playing, you got a lot bigger issues to worry about than who the third string quarterback is. But, trying to find lemonade out of lemons, I think that is a minor positive that will help this team really from now until beginning of the season.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think that there's kind of like a two-tier role for Tommy DeVito this year. And I think you really, really clearly outlined tier one. Like, this is job one, responsibility one is he is the veteran in the room in terms of the terminology and the offense from the quarterback position. It's absolutely true. He can kind of, guide, just like you said, any veteran that comes in here, because any veteran that's been around to multiple teams has experience in trying to pick up a new offense quickly. So any veteran that comes in, whether it's a veteran that's going to be taking the reins this year, like a Russell Wilson or an Aaron Rodgers, or if it's a veteran that's going to be backing up Cam Ward this year, you know what I mean? Anybody, he's going to have to do that. So that's number one. And then I think tier two is, I think he gets a final shot at being the quarterback 3 here. And I do think it's a final shot because I think there's a chance he just doesn't make it through to the final 53 roster this year. In fact, I think there's a really good chance he doesn't make the final 53 roster. And the reason I say that is because I think that they're going to go guns blazing at the quarterback position. Like, they're going to bring in somebody at quarterback 2 that might have to be quarterback 1 given the quarterback situations this year. You know what I mean? I think there's going to be a two-pronged solution this year.
Yeah, and quite honestly, for all the things I said, which are positives, by the time the season starts, he's on the 53-man roster. Fine. By then, quarterback 1, quarterback 2 will be more brought up to speed. They don't need him anymore. So it is value, really, like I said, is from now until, and then also the amount of money we're talking about. You're not changing what you're spending in the quarterback room or the roster as a whole on what you're paying him. So it's just kind of that's fine. We can keep status quo until rubber hits road, and that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, because of his contract number, exactly like you said, his role is going to be transitioning. It's not going to change who you do or don't sign. But what I'm saying is that if let's just say there's no scenario in which the Giants don't, I certainly hope there's no scenario in which the Giants don't double dip with some level of bravado at the quarterback position. You know what I mean? Like, let's just say they go all in, they get Cam Ward, right? And they want him. They're still going to need a veteran backup behind him that they're going to have to spend some decent money on to help a guy like Cam Ward along the way. If they go Shedeur Sanders or if they go Aaron Rodgers, like they're still going to need all that. If they wait any further into the draft, into a Jackson Dart or a Ryan Howard or whatever, then you're going to need to be spending more forward onto an Aaron Rodgers or a Russell Wilson guy. So you're still spending a lot, which means there's just going to be less room, I think, for Tommy DeVito on the 53-man roster. And the fact of the matter is, just being who he is, he may not survive living on the practice squad. He may wind up on another team.
Yeah, and that's fine.
Yes, at this point, it's fine.
If we lose a third-string quarterback to another team who thinks he's a backup, that's great. I mean,
right.
Despite of what Sean Stiletto thinks, I don't think he's a starting quarterback in this league and ever will be a quarterback in this league. So if there's an opportunity to become a closer path to getting on the field by being a backup somewhere else, more power to him. I think he's done more. We squeezed enough, juice out of this lemon already with him that we could ever possibly thought of in the 2+ years he's been with the Giants. That's fine. He can move on, and we'll all be proven wrong if he all of a sudden becomes the Kurt Warner and becomes,
right,
an all-pro.
Well, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is, so like his tier 1 responsibility is helping that transition. Tier 2 is he deserves a shot to be a quarterback 3. Maybe he impresses and they decide to keep him on the roster. They see the value in him this year and keeping him on. But where I don't see him surviving this team is in any position where they feel they need to continue to groom him. I think that project is over, and at this point, this regime, they're grooming only one quarterback this year.
Yeah, how many years do you need to groom a third-string quarterback? I mean, it's going to be his third year. Yeah. He's 26 years old. He's not.
Well, I mean, grooming him in any regard to be a quarterback 1, 2, or 3 at this point, there's just no more grooming left for him.
You got to be a quarterback 3 or you're gone.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So that's why I think that there's a strong chance that he's just not going to be good enough for the investments that they're going to put at the quarterback position this year for him to survive the 53-man cutdown this year. I don't think it's going to happen.
And that's a good thing.
Yes, it is a good thing.
What are we doing here?
Yeah.
We want the Giants to be a good team. We want them to be first a team that is not non-competitive. Then we want them to be a team that can potentially win game, then try to make the playoffs and try to be a champion. If we're like, well, we really want Tommy DeVito to keep, no, that's not in the progression for being competitive and trying to win. So if we get a quarterback room, if we bring in whoever QB1 is, whatever route we get, and we get a very capable backup, and he has to go, sorry, the bar has been risen and expectations are risen, and he moves on. And thanks for the memories.
In other quarterback news around the league, Geno Smith was traded for by the Las Vegas Raiders. So traded from Seattle to Las Vegas for the cost of a 2025 third-round pick. Geno Smith is in the final year of his contract. He is a $31 million cap hit. He is 34 years old. I think this is a great move for Las Vegas. I think it's really smart.
Yeah, I wanted to start this off by asking, if you are the general manager of the Giants, and Seattle comes to you and say you can have Geno Smith for a third-round pick. What's your thoughts?
Yes, I'd do it.
Me too.
Yep.
No questions asked. Even if it's for one. Again, my caveat is that whoever veteran I'm bringing in is a bridge, and I know it's a bridge. But for this year, Geno Smith is ideal for me to keep me competitive.
Correct.
And,
yeah.
And the cost $31 million. Probably gonna, if we want somebody decent, it's going to cost from that 1 year basis. It's not a contract that we're going to be paying for the next couple of years and be, hamstrung by it. I would, only to give up a third round pick. Sign me up for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes more sense for the Giants than the Raiders, to be honest with you, because getting a guy like him and the Giants being in a position to get one of the quarterbacks just sitting there, I don't know. I just think it makes a ton of sense. He's in the final year of his deal, so you don't have to do anything to alter his contract. Is $31 million too much for Geno Smith? Maybe by like $5-6 million. I don't think it's crazy for what he's produced recently. Just like you said, you're competitive right away. I think
was Geno with Pete Carroll in Seattle? Were they
absolutely
together?
Yes.
So there you go too. That's thinking about it from Seattle's standpoint, also. Vegas's standpoint. That's your installer quarterback.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's just a brilliant move.
Yeah, and for Vegas, this makes a ton of sense because they're further down the draft order. So I mean, they may not even get a crack or whatever.
Completely.
Yeah. So but does this take Vegas out of the QB draft where they're drafting at like 7 or whatever it is? I think the answer to that is no. It doesn't at all. No. But does it take them out of moving up to number 1 or moving up ahead of the Giants?
No, not at all. I think they're certainly still in play. I don't think there's the urgency and the.
Well, I think it helps because now you've lost a third-round pick bargaining chip. If you don't have a third-round pick and it's going to cost you your first and your second-round pick this year and then something next year to move up to, I mean, like, you have less ammo, and now you've traded away, like, all of your picks on 2 quarterbacks. You know what I mean? So it's just less likely. It's not off the table, but it certainly helps.
I think on the surface it helps, but, the Raiders are still the Raiders, and they're unpredictable. They've always have been, and they may be double dipping and be like, we're going to give up a first round pick in 2027 as part of this deal. You never know. So I think it makes it a little harder to do, but I don't think their incentive to do it is dropped at all. That's just my gut feeling. And if it was a different team, I might feel a little differently, but I feel like the Raiders they're a team that likes to make splash and, be damned with the future and repercussions with, emptying your draft capital. So I would not at all be shocked if they still make a deal and jump ahead of us.
I just think that it becomes harder to do.
Oh, that 2 things can be true.
Yeah. Otherwise, yeah, I don't really have anything further on that other than I wish we had discussed Geno Smith as a guy.
Yeah, I thought it was. Yeah, I didn't see it as a possibility that he would get traded. If you want to think about
I really just don't know what like Seattle's going to do now. That's why I guess it never really seemed feasible.
Yeah, the one thing I was kind of thinking about, because I think, only about me and the Giants is, well, let's say the Giants take a pretty massive leap this year. And on the surface right now, Seattle may be one of those wild card teams you have to maybe consider. And now all of a sudden they have a quarterback. So, now he's over in the AFC. So I think that, again, who knows who they'll draft or what moves they're going to make. But, you know, having a decent quarterback leave our conference helps us minutely a little bit in our path.
It does enter Seattle into the QB sphere, though, because I think right now that leaves them with just Jaron Hall and Sam Howell, and that's just not happening going into the year.
No,
so
no.
I don't really know what that means for Seattle, but it does mean, competition for I don't know. Is Russell Wilson off the table for Seattle?
Crazier things have happened. Possibly.
I mean, it's a completely different regime than when he was there. I don't think there's any other holdovers there that would even remember him as a teammate.
Prodigal son coming home.
I don't know. Aaron Rodgers' destination, possibly.
I would think maybe Geno Smith more than Aaron Rodgers. I'm fascinated by the Aaron Rodgers talk. I really, really am. I'm fascinated by how many people are like, that's our number one choice. I really want him, and I just, the eye test for me for the last couple of years. He's 40 something years old. He missed an entire season. He was not that good last year. Don't show me the counting stats. Show me the deeper stats. He's not that good, and he's just a headache. And it's just shocking how everybody's right to Aaron Rodgers and not interested. Still not interested. I'll be, might be actually a little angry if we end up getting him, because I just think this team does not need a bigger circus than what we're going to be this year anyway.
I think the biggest detractor me, and just from a football sense and not a personal sense on how I feel, for the Aaron Rodgers thing is that it's not a smooth transition into a younger quarterback. He's not going to mentor him, and there's a solid chance he doesn't show up for training camp. You know what I mean? And that right there is my issue. That I think that's a good enough reason to be like, this is, but if you're Seattle and you're just like, we just need a quarterback this year and we're not really grooming anybody behind it, we just need something, then maybe
get through this season. Yeah,
exactly. Then that is where an Aaron Rodgers move actually makes sense, because who gives a shit if he doesn't show it? Like, who gives a shit if he's, I mean, it's always bad if you have like bad vibes in the locker room, but it's not like you're leaving this young quarterback in the wind with no role model kind of thing.
Well, the thing then, the downside of Aaron Rodgers is job killing for a lot of people in the Giants organization. If it's Seattle and he's terrible, or he's hurt, or he's, just causes this team to be, 3-14 or something, they have a front office, they have a coaching staff that's got leeway, and they still have capital hasn't been completely spent up, and it's not the worst thing in the world, because then they can go get a quarterback next year. We do it, it's curtains for the GM, the coaching staff. It's a complete overhaul. So maybe if, in that standpoint, you take a shot with Aaron Rodgers. If he's halfway decent, you're successful, great. If not, you're putting us in a better position for the 2026 draft, free agency, trade market, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, with any of that, I mean, has your stance changed? Where do you feel the Giants should be going right now at quarterback as of today? Or did nothing change?
Nothing has really changed. If you really like Cam Ward, you really, really like him, you go out and you get him. If you don't really, really like him, you get a mid-tier free agent quarterback. You kind of sort of someone good enough to keep you competitive this year, and then you just you reassess for next year. I think if this team won 3 games last year. This team wins 6 with a middling quarterback. I think that'd be enough for the coaching staff and everybody to be around another year, and then you take a shot at getting your quarterback next year.
I don't agree with that.
You don't agree with it? You don't think if they?
I don't think. No. Let me make sure I heard you right. If they just have some random veteran quarterback, middling quarterback, and they win 6 games, that's enough to keep them around till next year. That's what you said?
I think so. I
Yeah,
honestly think
yeah,
so.
I don't think so.
I think if they lose games in completely uncompetitive fashion like they did last year, where there's
No,
just no chance
I
of
don't
this.
even mean that. I just the 6 wins is not good enough.
Mm,
I
I
don't think I think they're nope. I just don't think that's
I think if they can convince Mayor that this is the plan, and part of that plan, like they were convincing this past offseason, I think that will be suffice.
yeah. I don't think they've adequate the way they're hunting quarterbacks this offseason. I don't think in any way they convinced Mara that they can draft a quarterback next year. I just don't see that happening.
Well, they don't necessarily have to draft a quarterback next year either. You know, you take a there's a free agent out there that they really want, or there's a
No, no, no,
trade
no, no.
partner
Hang
they
on.
really want.
Well, then they're taking a big swing at a quarterback this year. They're not middling quarterback 6 wins nothing.
I meant if they couldn't get the guy that they want. That's how I started the whole thing. Was if they don't get the guy that they want, and
In
I
the
think they really
in
want
what
it. They really
regard, draft or free
in
agency?
I think in draft first and then free agency second. But my gut tells me they're going to make a run after Cam Ward and they're going to trade up for him. That's my gut.
Yeah, if they don't get a big ticket quarterback via draft or free agency, then they're probably done anyway.
Probably.
But if they're not done, it's because they were in a wild card hunt, and in which case they had more than 6 wins. It's just not happening. Like there's no way that they have a leash beyond this upcoming year unless they make a big move and show progress. So like if the big move is a young quarterback but they only win 6 games, that to me is different than
That's completely different.
that's completely different. So I think that's an extension right there. If they take a swing at a quarterback, then they have to win more than 6 games. Like if they take a swing at if they were to have traded for Stafford or something like that, they would have needed to be in the playoffs.
I would think so too.
Yeah. Okay.
I would think at a Stafford level, yes, absolutely. I don't think at an Aaron Rodgers level, no. Aaron Rodgers is not that good.
Right. No, I agree with that.
Very honestly, he's just not that good. I mean, if you consider a swing a Jameis Winston,
Ugh.
or a Marcus Mariota, I don't consider those swings.
No, I don't
So
consider those swings. No, I mean like a real swing. So like that would
Geno.
require at this point trading.
I think Geno would be one of those swings.
Yeah, because it's $31 million. And again, that's if you've done nothing else. So if they traded for Geno and drafted Shadur Sanders, Cam Ward, or if they drafted with the third overall pick or higher, then it almost doesn't. I think 6 wins gets you there if they had done everything with Geno Smith and everything, because it's still that draft pick is projecting hope.
Well, it's hope.
Yeah.
Again, remember we the theme that we say all the time: wins are hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so a slight edit in the episode here. There is some breaking news while we were recording. So Josh Allen just signed an extension with the Buffalo Bills. On top of that, Seattle Seahawks made an additional trade. So let's take these a little bit one at a time. Tell me a little bit about Josh Allen's contract extension with Buffalo.
Woo, hang on to your hat for this one. 6 years, $330 million. It includes $250 million guaranteed. Wow, that is nuts. And again, wearing my Giants hat, that makes me wonder, how much of an impact is that going to have on the rest of the quarterback free agent market out there? And my initial thought is, as we're kind of learning this all in real time and reacting in real time, it's that guys like Josh Allen are superstars. They are in that extreme top tier, best of the best. I don't know how much of this is going to filter down to all of a sudden the rising tide raising, the price of guys like, Justin Fields or anything. So it's just a good for him move, but I don't think it's really going to impact us that much in our search.
Will that affect Brock Purdy?
Well, the last thing I saw on SF Gate, which is the San Francisco website, was that they are having it's not smooth sailing in the contract negotiations. I mean, Brock Purdy, if you want to compare resumes and stuff, Brock Purdy's been to a Super Bowl, right? He's been to an NFC Championship game. I think this might be, but I think you're getting more with Josh Allen than you are with Brock Purdy. I think if you put Josh Allen in any offense, you're going to get Josh Allen. I'm not sure I can say the same about that with Brock Purdy.
No,
And
and that's kind of what I was going to say. Josh Allen, to me, we had this MVP conversation, and for me, he was the MVP. A lot of people wanted Lamar because statistically, Lamar did X, Y, and Z.
mhm,
I look at the teams, I look at the term valuable, and the roster around Josh Allen is not even close to the roster around Lamar Jackson to me. It's not even close to the roster around Jalen Hurts to
mhm.
me. And I think that Josh Allen is that guy that can elevate a shit roster. He is more than just a very good quarterback. He is somebody that an entire team gets better when he's on that team. I
He's a
think
capital V valuable is what he
right.
is.
So I think that's a distinct difference between him and a good quarterback like Jalen Hurts, who is simply a good quarterback. Lamar Jackson, I'm not exactly sure where I land on him. I think that his abilities cover up deficiencies in a roster, but I don't know that he makes a roster better. Maybe is the way to say that.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
so I have like as a S tier of Josh Allen, and then like an A tier of Lamar Jackson right underneath it or something like that. But
Mhm.
um, I don't think that this affects the whole. I mean, Tommy DeVito may be kicking himself for not waiting a week to sign his contract. I don't think so.
So it filters down to him for an extra 10 grand. Is that what
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
saying?
yeah. Um, yeah, I don't know. Far less interesting to me. I mean that I don't want to say is an appropriate contract because that's an astronomical one, and I don't think anyone should get paid that kind of money in any field doing anything.
Well, if you're
But
generating the revenue for it, you get what you're worth. So I have no
yeah,
problem with these
that's
guys. Yeah.
sort of my point. That it's not
Capitalist crank is all about getting what
that has
you
nothing
can
to do
get.
with anything. What I'm saying is my opinion on that number. It's got to be close to unprecedented. So I don't know.
In football, it is for sure. But
Yeah,
that amount of guaranteed money in football
it's crazy
that is
high.
unprecedented. Yeah.
But more interesting to me is Seattle trading away DK Metcalf to the Pittsburgh Steelers. What was the trade details? What do we have?
Right now we have DK Metcalf to the Steelers. Adam Schefter. That's all we know right now. I mean,
Okay,
this literally just came across the wire, and I'm doing my frantic research as we speak.
well, I mean, the only thing to me is I would think that this is for draft capital because now they need a quarterback very badly. Pittsburgh certainly needs a wide receiver other than George Pickens. In my opinion, I don't think Seattle has ever properly used DK Metcalf. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, and that's really what I want to think about here.
Hmm,
Yeah,
hmm.
to me, he reminds me of AJ Brown. Like he's the physical big body guy that's going to win on 3rd and 4 like 99% of the time. You find ways to get
So,
him in single coverage on 3rd down and you
so
throw
why
him the
are you
fucking
going to
ball.
him 99.9% of the time? You're right. Exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, and I guess because he has the downfield speed, they've just used him a lot that way. And I'm not saying he can't do that. I'm just saying that's not what makes him special or unique. He is not uniquely fast downfield. You know what I mean? Like, yes, he's competitive. He'll go up and get the 50-50 balls, but that's what good downfield receivers do. He's merely good at that. He is uniquely gifted at getting those short, like just frustrating and getting the first downs. You know what I
I
mean?
got some, I got some details here from NFL Network. He's being traded to the Steelers for a 2025 second round pick,
Mhm.
and then he will sign a 5-year, $150 million contract. Includes 4 new years, 132 million in new money, and run through the 29 season. He had 1 year and 18 million left on his previous contract.
So the interesting tidbit there is that the Seahawks are now getting another second round pick. So that to me is either ammunition to move up for possibly sliding Shadur Sanders. I also think that quarterbacks, there are a lot of what you could consider B tier quarterbacks in this draft. You know what I
Mm.
mean? With between the Riley Leonards, the Will Howards, the
Knicks,
what? Who?
not Knicks. Fucking the guy from Old Miss,
Jackson Dart.
Darson Dart. Yeah,
Yeah.
I get my old Knicks guys messed up.
Um. Yeah. There's a handful of guys like that. Um. That they don't might not need to trade into the top 10 for. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
They might only need to move up a few steps. So,
But
uh,
having a guy like Metcalf would make, if you're going to go to a second tier quarterback, make their lives a little easier. Now you've lost your, you know, wide receiver one.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta give things up. That's what
That's
trades. You know what I mean? You're in that position. I think that.
this might have been a
I
thing where they
mean,
just didn't want to sign a contract like that for Metcalf too. They know that was coming, and maybe
this is probably a stupid thing to say, but it just feels like that there's good wide receivers that come out every single year.
yeah.
And to me, if I have to give up a good wide receiver to get my quarterback, then that's what I have to give up.
I would always. Metcalf had told the Seahawks that he wanted to be traded
Okay.
in the last couple of days. So there you
So
go. So
so there's part of it right there.
mm.
But I do think that wide receivers are oftentimes expendable, and I don't think that DK Metcalf is a top 5, top 10 wide receiver. He's very very good. Another guy that's probably worth that contract that he's getting from Pittsburgh, but
For
uh,
every high-profile great quarterback, there's one just as good, not as high-profile. I feel like the
are you
wide
talking about
receiver
wide
position.
receivers?
Yeah, the wide receiver position to me has gotten so much better in the last 10, 15 years that
100% agree. Yeah.
they the things that they're doing with catching ball, keeping their feet in bounds, blocking downfield, everything. It's just like the position is completely revolutionized in the last 10 years, and they're not at the scarcity of greatness. You don't have to have like one of the 3 or 4 best. You just need to have your guy who's good, and I think it's just easier to get that guy than it has been.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So I think that it makes him perfectly expendable while still maintaining his value. So I think that this trade probably worked out for everybody. I still don't know who Pittsburgh's quarterback is going to be.
Yeah, good question. Do you think do you think that changes your about them keeping any of those guys? Like what's his name?
Russell Wilson?
Ru- no, yeah, I was thinking of Justin Fields.
Well, they have to keep somebody. They have to get
Yeah,
somebody. They can't let everybody leave and not get anybody. So
right.
I would think that maybe it has more to do with Russell Wilson. There's chemistry there, maybe.
hmm
Is
Yeah,
there?
we were just talking about chemistry with uh old coach. So maybe I don't know. I mean, Russell Wilson's an odd cat.
Yeah, I know
You know,
that
I, I
he's very hard to.
he's
I,
hard. Things you would say, oh well, chemistry. It's like, well, he's also burned out his welcome in several spots now and everything, and several different coaches. So who knows with him?
All right, so let's continue our assessment of the roster here. We're gonna flip to the other side of the ball. We've went through quarterbacks already. We are gonna probably keep talking
Try to do it every week.
Yeah. We did the skill position group last week, and the week before that we did the offensive line. This week we're gonna flip to the other side of the ball, and we're gonna do the defensive front. So we're gonna start here. Let's start with edge rushers.
Let's do that.
So right now on the Giants roster, edge rushers, you pretty much just have Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau signed this year. Brian Burns is signed through 2028. He is your premier player in terms of he's him and Dexter Lawrence are your premier players in terms of contract size on the defensive side of the ball. He's costing $30 million. He's not going anywhere for quite some time. And he's 27 years old. Kayvon Thibodeau is on the other side, 25. He's signed through the end of this year.
But you could pick up his option, right?
Yeah, I think they have to make that decision. Did they already make that decision?
I don't know, but I think it's a foregone conclusion they will.
Yeah, I
I
agree.
mean, why wouldn't they?
Um, and that's pretty much it. That's pretty much what they've got right now. And from a pass rush standpoint, I think that the duo of Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau is pretty good. And by pretty good, I mean it's just fine. The biggest problem is that there's no depth at all behind them, and it's just pretty good up front. And I think that Tibbs is like a solid pass rusher. I think that he's a solid run defender, but he's not really excellent at either. Burns, I think, is an excellent speed rusher, but otherwise pretty below average at showing strength up front. He's just okay against the run, and even aside from the depth issues, I think that the starters, there's still sort of a gap in responsibility there.
In my red, yellow, green kind of analysis of the each of the 11 positions starting and backup, I have 4 greens as starters, and 2 of them are in this group. I have Brian Burns and I have Kayvon Thibodeau. And I assess it based upon production and, contract value. Kayvon Thibodeau is going to be here this year. He's going to be here next year. Um, I know people, I think because of his, coming out of high school, that he was a big, big prospect. In college, he was one of those guys that, if you don't watch college football every week, you heard the name and he's a big personality. You expected him to be something that he probably is not going to be in the NFL, but that doesn't mean he's not good or, very capable or a guy I don't have to worry about. And I think for what he is, it's a sunk cost for where you drafted him, what your expectation is. Those kind of don't matter anymore. It's what is he as a player? And I think he's just fine. I mean, we were talking about, would you pick up the fifth year? I don't think it's even a no-brainer. You absolutely do, and you move on with him, hoping maybe he takes that next step to be a superstar. But I think for what he is right now, he's just fine. Brian Burns is, he's fine. He's good. He's not an elite superstar, but I think these are building blocks. They're going to be here a couple of years, and they're green in my book. When we get to depth, that's when we start getting, super red. There's a long, long list of red we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, and I think that I would like to address this position group with a draft pick. I think that the Giants have too many other needs that probably are going to require a draft pick first. But I mean, if I had my preference, I would be adding a draft pick as part of the depth rotation to kind of like work their way up. But I just don't, and it could still happen just based on the way the draft falls and what the Giants do. That might be the best move, but I just don't think that's going to happen. So I think for now, I would put the getting a young guy in there off. You have two relatively young guys right away with a 25-year-old Kayvon Thibodeau, a 27-year-old Brian Burns. I think you can get two veterans here on like 2-year deals is what I'm thinking, something like that. Mid-range guys, and I think that there's a lot of ways you can go, right? Like you can get. Obviously, you can get two solid two-way players that are both good at pass rushing and run defending. Obviously, that's definitely one way you can go. You can go one who's better pass rusher, one that's better run defender. And I think that you have the third option of just getting two really good run defenders at edge to cycle in there. And I think if you do that, then you can kind of keep fresh legs with Burns and Thibodeau. So they have a lot of options, and I think that there's a lot of free agent options on the table. I don't know what these guys are going to command, but guys like Jonathan Bullard and Josh Uche and Marcus Davenport, Cleveland Farrell, Dante Fowler, Solomon Thomas, Derek Barnett, Azeez Ojulari even. All of these guys I think are mid-rangey, probably free agents where they're going to cost like at most $10 million and probably less than that, probably anywhere between 4 and 7 or 8.
The most interesting name on that list, I think, is Azeez Ojulari right now, because what do you think his market value actually is out there? Because he's a guy that when he plays is very effective, but has trouble staying on the field. And well, let's look at it if you were the Giants and you see this guy out there in the open market. Are you, and you have money to spend, you have money to burn. Are you overpaying for a guy like this, or do you think he can probably be had to come back? I mean, the one negative to me is, he's probably not starting on this team. Well, so it may not be as attractive to him, but can be part of a rotation for sure.
I think that his market value is limited, and it's limited because of his injury history, but that doesn't mean that he's not worth anything. I think, your question is too broad. What does he look like to the Giants? The Giants are in a particular situation. A different team is in a different situation. So, any team that's looking to sign him knows that he is not to be relied on as a starter. They know they're getting a depth piece. The thing is what does that depth represent to you as an organization? So if you're Philadelphia, this is an attractive signing because he doesn't have to start. He's effective right off the bench as a pass rusher. You've already got a good stable room. You know what I mean? This is a guy who can equal 6 sacks this year, even if because you don't need to rely on him. He can just go in there with fresh legs. As the Giants, that kind of luxury, 6 sacks coming off of the bench, is just further down the pecking order of other things.
See, I think there's a third option for him too, and I think this is what he's going to do. I think there's going to be some team that, isn't very good defensively and may not even be a contender and just says, we're going to roll the dice and take a shot on you and way overspend to get him. A team with a defense that's kind of bleh. But I think this is a guy that he wants the money, and I also think
sure,
but I think he also wants to start. I think he feels like he's proven himself that he can be a starter and is willing to roll the dice on himself. But I think a team will be out there willing to roll the dice, someone that's not very good, and bring him in. I think that's what's going to happen with him.
I think it's a possibility. I see what you're saying. I definitely agree that he's a guy who's going to take the money because, honestly, with his injury history, this is kind of his last shot at like a bag, right? I mean, and maybe that's not true. Maybe he gets a 1-year deal this year and he goes off, he plays every single game, doesn't get hurt, and winds up with 13 sacks. Then he has it. But that's
incredibly gambling on yourself, I think.
Sure. But I think that he's played his way out of that market. I don't think that market is going to exist for him this year, but it is possible. For the Giants, I think that he represents a guy who can cycle in and out with Brian Burns. I think that that's something that he can do to keep both of them with fresh legs. I do think that by signing him, you are forced to get someone at the very least that is a strong, solid run defender. I think you kind of have to go like a Solomon Thomas or something like that.
Well, I feel like that's kind of priority one with this defense anyway. I think, stopping the run will make the rest of this defense better.
Yeah.
And I think it has to be addressed regardless. So I think they're looking at that anyway, and this just would make it more of a pressing concern. But this defense has trouble because, we don't cause a lot of 3rd and 8s because in 3rd and longs because we stop the run. We just don't. And your reasoning has made so much sense over, we spent more time worrying about offense last offseason. We were playing catch up, and now we have to
balance it out.
Right.
Yeah. I think Azeez Ojulari represents a possible option for the Giants. I don't see it happening. I think that they're going to invest a little bit lower and get some run defending guys, and I think they're going to use Kayvon and Brian Burns as their pass rushers this year.
And I think that's the way I recommend as well.
They need people out there setting an edge. They can't, you know what I mean? Like funnel everything. They can't let teams be able to run away from Dexter Lawrence. Is just the answer, right?
Yeah, have a defense that kind of works together, utilizing their best assets, and their best asset is Dexter Lawrence. And if we can get Dexter Lawrence some depth help where he's not on the field every single snap, and he can be more effective, and you form your defense so you're right, you're funneling towards him, that makes him better. It makes this whole defense better.
Yeah, and let's just transition that right into the defensive line thing. I mean, this is another area that I deem a high priority fix over the offseason.
Can't make this, other than Dexter Lawrence, I can't make this group any more red than it possibly is. I looked on, when you do on Excel, looking at the different shades of red, I was trying to go off the spectrum more red to find the red that I was looking for, and I couldn't find it.
The center of this defense is a very, very weak strength of the defense. I think Nacho has been average at best. He's only signed through 2025 anyway. The late round selections of Jordan Riley, DJ Davidson, and Elijah Chapman, who is an undrafted free agent, they have their roles, but none of them are starters.
They have a lot of bodies. They don't have a lot of
They have
players.
A ton of bodies, but they don't have a lot of players. I think that there's some redundancy in those Riley and Davidson conversations, or Riley and Chapman. I'm really not sure. I think that Nacho is really on his last legs. Dexter Lawrence is the best player on this team. And I've said this before, they should protect him by not forcing him to play 99% of the snaps, nor should the defense fall off a cliff the moment he gets off the field for a breather. That should not happen either.
And not only playing 99% of the snaps, 99% of those snaps often being double teamed and being worked even harder. And those are
Absolutely.
harder snaps every one he's in
Yeah.
because of why not? I mean, what else you worry about anybody else on the defensive line?
Yeah, and I think that that's sort of the issue there is the double team. Like, make him more productive when he is on the field, and let him be more productive by getting him off the field from time to time. So I think that means getting a 3 or 4 man defensive tackle rotation. If Nacho is going to be part of that, then I think that they need a starter. They need someone to start next to Dexter Lawrence, because Nacho can't be that guy. If you want Nacho to be the guy off the bench, I fully support that. In terms of Jordan Riley, DJ Davidson, Elijah Chapman, I'm not even sure that any one of those guys should be in the 4 man rotation.
Yeah.
I think
Let them
that
fight it out to be the fourth guy.
I would say let them fight it out to be the 5th guy.
Yeah, that'd be.
I would add a second defensive tackle here as well.
So we're thinking, we spend some money to get a starter, and then we draft pretty high to get another one also. So we have a guy we can groom as well as an immediate impact guy.
I think that that's my ideal solution. I would really,
Hmm.
really like that. I think that it's time when I think any time that you sign somebody to an extension like a Dexter Lawrence or an Andrew Thomas, when you do something like that, you've identified a cornerstone, especially at a position like those where they need a pair to be effective. Like, Andrew Thomas isn't going to be effective if the right tackle is getting beat constantly and quarterback's getting sacked anyway.
It's different. It's different. Yeah.
And Dexter Lawrence isn't going to be effective if he's the only one doing anything in the middle, and they can triple team him and still get success on the ground or in the air. It doesn't matter. He needs somebody else to help him be effective. The immediate thing for me to do is to get a veteran that right off the street is going to be capable to play alongside of him, and then you draft somebody that's going to eventually be as good as or close to that veteran to groom right behind him and be the sub in case somebody gets hurt. And I think that my ideal situation is right now to do that, is to, sign a mid-range starter like Sebastian Joseph or BJ Hill or Linville Joseph or something like that, and then draft a premium asset. Tyleik Williams from Ohio State, stands out.
We've been saying, for the past few of these preview shows, like, well, we can't spend the money here. We need it for something else. We can't spend here, but this is the goal of that. We're not spending as much here. This is where we need to spend the money. It's to me, the most, other than quarterback, it's the most critical need on this team. I think when you guys when you were on Talking Giants, and the three you were talking about, what are the top 5 position groups? If I would have been not flying and on that show, I would have said, you know, defensive line, interior defensive line. That's where my draft capital, that's where my money needs to go to fix. So I have no problem spending to fortify this immediately.
I also think that the prospect of drafting a defensive tackle to come off the bench, be that third defensive tackle, is I think that it's more what am I trying to say? More feasible than edge rusher in this draft. I mean, I think a lot of times there are few edge rushers that you're going to get outside of the first or very top of the second round that are ever going to develop into anything more than a sub role. And obviously there's exceptions to everything that I'm saying, right? The draft is different year to year because players are different year to year. But this particular year, there seems to be a heavy depth on the defensive tackle spot. So I think that it's very feasible that the Giants, like I said about the edge rusher position, get 2 veterans, because I just don't see it this year in the draft. It could happen if the draft falls the right way, but I just don't see that happening. I absolutely see a more feasible pathway for a defensive tackle to be on the board that the Giants should consider taking. That could be that third guy instead of Nacho. You know what I mean? And that's what I'm saying. Like, ideally, I want somebody signed to be the starter next to Lawrence, and I want that third guy off the bench to not be Nacho. I want someone to force Nacho to be the 4th guy. And you could even get rid of him. You know what I mean? Like, he's a $5 million cost, but I think there's only $1.4 million in dead hit if they get rid of him.
It's peanuts. Yeah.
It really, I mean, you don't save much, but you also don't lose money. So, if that's the way to go, then that's the way to go.
We're kind of paying placeholder money for kind of a placeholder guy right now is what he is. And I think you're right. No, if you need to, if the competition and who we bring in necessitates that he move on for them, that's a good thing. Again,
Well, let me ask you this: would you rather pay $5 million to Raheem Nunez Roches or BJ Hill?
I'd rather BJ Hill.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. So like, it's
Of
not like
course.
$5 million is a lot for Nacho. It's not like it's a lot for a third defensive tackle to come off the bench. That's a perfectly acceptable number. But if you're attacking this position group, I don't have a problem cutting Nacho and signing BJ
Yeah,
Hill or
it
Linval
needs to
Joseph or something.
it needs to be approved and addressed, improved and addressed. And yeah, I don't. Status quo is not going to cut it. So if I have an option of him over BJ Hill, I'm going BJ Hill.
All right, so last position group that we're going to cover is the linebacker group. And I'm fitting this in with this group because of the defense that we're kind of running now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that if we're only rushing 4 guys every single down in, down out, then the linebacker group is going to have to play that dual role of coverage, and they're not going to be blitzing. So they're going to be a heavy part of the run stopping group, which was kind of the key problem. So I wanted to go into linebackers in terms of run stops first. Do you kind of agree with that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm looking. I'm looking at a draft board as we're talking now, and thinking about Abdul Carter for this.
Oh, for what, as the edge group guy?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that that's smart.
Yeah. That's I was going to ask. Like, I'm not looking at it for me. I'm just looking at him and thinking about this as I'm kind of formulating my ideas here.
Like, I think that if you were to have traded for Matt Stafford, Abdul Carter is sort of on the table, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Okay.
Um, but we have we have like a month and a half of draft stuff upcoming. So for
Mm.
listeners, whatever, that's not like that won't be a more expansive conversation later.
Right. 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 Right.
But in terms of linebacker group, like the middle of this defense was a struggle in 2024, and
Mm-hmm.
I think Bobby Okereke either took a step back or maybe he's just less of a fit for this defense than Winks.
Or
McFadden,
both.
yeah, or
Honestly.
both, right? Yeah, and McFadden I think has been a solid run defender, but I think that at times he's just a step behind in pass defense, and just in general, there's just very little here in terms of depth at the linebacker position. We just have Bobby Okereke. He signed through 2026, and he cost $14 million. You know what I mean? There's not really a cheap solution in cutting him this year, so I don't think that's going to happen. McFadden is signed through just the end of this year, so that's kind of a problem in my opinion. Darius Muasau, 7th-round pick from last year, signed through 2027, is the only other linebacker. And then I think that there's a good chance that they're going to retain the practice squad guy they had, Deontay Johnson from Toledo, but and he did get meaningful snaps at the end of the year, so I don't know. That's something else.
I don't think Okereke is an issue for this year, but it's definitely something we need to address like next year and going forward. I think this is the last year. You know, we rely on him. I don't think we need to worry about replacing him now, cutting him now, any of that stuff. I don't think it's um, cost effective, and I don't think he's a problem. But I could see a potential. If this thing started going downhill last year, could potentially go downhill quickly. We need to make a move for next year. So I had him as a yellow, but kind of like a light yellow with a little touch of red in there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I understand that, and that's the finances certainly point in that direction too. So he costs $14 million this year. It's $10 million in dead cap penalty for cutting him. So you only save 4 if you cut him this year. But next year it's the same thing, $14 million cap hit, but $5 million in dead hit.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean that becomes more feasible then, and I think that they need to do something here. They certainly need to figure out what they want to do with Micah McFadden. And I think that if by the middle of the I don't know. I think that they need to make it clear to his agent that they would like to re-sign him by the middle of the year. I don't think he needs an extension mid-year or anything like that. But I think they need to start those talks.
Put the positive vibes in that we're going to work towards something where I think even those kind of conversations can make it a smoother pathway to, you know, an extension maybe next year.
Yeah,
But yeah.
because the way I'm looking at it is, unless Bobby Okereke has a complete turnaround this year, I think it's likely that he's going to be gone for financial reasons alone next year. You can't have McFadden leave too without having to really seriously address another position next year. We're having to dump multiple assets into it. So I think going in with a plan with Micah McFadden by week 8, week 9, week 10 is probably a good idea. I think that you need a better guy off the bench also.
I agree.
I think that a low free agent veteran signing like an Eric Kendricks or something like that goes a long way for this team. I think if you can get him on a 2-year deal with like a 1-year possible out, you know what I mean? That's also kind of a good idea. And I agree. I think you put off the long-term solution for Bobby Okereke until next year.
Maybe pause for 1 second.
Okay.
2 major things just happened. Josh Allen just signed for 6 years, 330, but more importantly, Seattle just traded DJ Metcalf to the Steelers.
Okay.
So, I mean, we were just talking about I think we should incorporate those 2 things, maybe even go back and edit some sort of conversation back into the other parts, because, you know, it happened and we're on there, and I think it kind of goes into the Seattle conversation of what exactly are they doing.
Yeah, we'll just stick it on at the end.
Yeah. Okay.
Respond to Eric Kendricks.
No, I want to go one more back about Okereke. Okereke is going to be 29 when the season starts, and you're thinking, like, if he takes another step back, like I think you made a comment, well, what if he bounces back? The odds of bouncing back after you start going downhill are very slim. So
well, I don't know. I don't know if he really went backwards athletically.
Mm-hmm. You think it's more because of the defensive scheme fit?
Kinda, yeah. I think that Wink put him in a lot of positions where he's either running forward with a very specific thing in mind, or he's in a lot of man coverage things. Just like very little, I don't want to say very little thinking, but it just put him in a lot of athletic situations. And I think in a more traditional defense like Bowen's, he's kind of in more zone coverage that maybe isn't his thing. You know what I mean? It makes coverage a little bit harder. And, you know, where he's not just running forward, he has to, like, do the run fits more.
Mm-hmm.
I think that maybe it just doesn't fit him as well. I don't know that it was really an athletic step back.
So that's an interesting case for this organization. And, you know, for personnel in this organization that may have a longer shelf life than the general manager and the coach do. Because if it's a situation about, you know, he's still, you know, athletically good, still a good football player, but in the right scheme, there's a very good chance after this season, we may have another scheme again. We have a whole other coaching staff again. So I'm not so quick to say this would necessarily be his last year and they're automatically moving on from him. You know, there's a chance that they may kind of, you know, let's see how all of this plays out. You know, if this is another bad year and, you know, everybody gets run and we start over, but he's still a pretty good asset, he might be kept depending on who that is. But that's a little 4D chess and thinking a little too far down the line.
Yeah, I mean, I think they just keep the options on the table. But yeah, I don't see doing the long term addressing at this position this year. I think they getting a veteran, somebody that can just kind of be a little bit better in pass coverage and zone coverage, and fit the run game. I do think that I like Darius Muasau and Deontay Johnson as the young guys that could probably fit in the run game behind Micah McFadden, who I think that's kind of his strength. I think that that's fine. I'm just worried about the pass defense side of things. And, you know, I wonder if the run defense would have been so bad last year if Deontay Johnson weren't hurt right away, because they had to use Darius Muasau early on in the year. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, we're also talking about kind of backup guys even then, you know, before.
That's my point.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I see what you're saying. I think a lot of things contributed to why the rush defense was not good last year, and
yeah,
exactly one too.
I do think that part of it is it's just the team wasn't very good. So.
Yeah, bottom line, right? And also you're factoring, you're bringing in a new defensive coordinator, so you have square pegs in round holes and getting used to everything. So yeah,
And
perfect
they
storm
they,
of
they really
madness.
didn't do a whole lot to address needs on that side of the ball. I mean, they waited
They
till
didn't.
last minute to sign a Dory Jackson.
Hmm.
They traded for Brian Burns, but really that's the thing. That was like the
That was
thing
the
that they
move.
did.
That was
Yeah.
that was the all in move they did. Yeah.
Hmm. So next week we're going to go over the defensive backfield, and that will be and specialists. We'll throw specialists in at the very end too.
Sure. Yeah, because that needs to be addressed. Because I do have thoughts about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, but that'll be next week, and then we're going to start talking about the draft, and we'll go sort of position by position and go through different prospects. So that's all very exciting. So be sure to stop by in the future for those episodes, and we will see you next week. Until then, go
Go
Giants.
Giants.